What's up, everyone? Welcome back to yet another episode of The Real Ones. And today I'm joined by the one and only Patrick Hayden. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I mean, it's a long time coming, right? Like CEO of LuxuryX today, and you've been in Dubai real estate for a long time. You've also hopped over to the UK as well as Australia, and like you're from Australia, right?
Yes, yeah. Grew up in Australia, yes.
Great.
Well, I'm Australian, yeah.
Yeah. Now you're a Dubaian.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is home, as it is for a lot of people now.
Yeah. No, awesome. Look, the way we typically go about these things, and I think I should give people a little bit more context. I think it was Lynette that sort of introduced us way back when.
It was, yes.
And then I remember coming to your office in a little bit of a suit and tie. I was like getting my entry into real estate and showing you like 2 tabs on a screen or something like that. I'm going like, Patrick, so are you going to switch CRMs or what? Like,
I think you showed me WhatsApp at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then for whatever reason, you believed in us very, very early on, and we're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to help this kid out. This CRM business is not an easy business, and we're going to show you what it might look like to have a good one. So work in progress, but I have to just say that out, like where, you believed in us quite early on, and like it has to be said, and really grateful for that, of course.
Sure, no problems. I think that the what you showed in the early stages, you could tell that you were going to build something great. So that's why we started to work with you on it, even though it was in such a infant stage, yeah, and there wasn't really much behind what you had built in terms of usable, yeah, CRM at that point. But you could see that you wanted to build something really good, and we were more than happy to jump on board and be a part of that.
No, well, we're really grateful, and the whole team loves hanging out with you guys. So it's been awesome. Let's take things to sort of the start of your journey, right? Like, what did 7-year-old Patrick want to be?
7-year-old Patrick was probably a naughty, cheeky little boy.
Yeah.
Quite entrepreneurial back then still, I think. I used to have all sorts of little businesses with my friends growing up as a young kid. But
any fun ones you want to talk about?
Do you know what pine cones are? So pine trees in where we grew up, they had these little pine cones, and they're great fire starters for open fires. And in Australia, where I'm from, down the south coast, the surf coast, it's quite cold in the winter, so everyone has open fires. Oh. So on my parents' property, that we had these lines of pine trees, and we used to collect the pine cones, and sell them to all of the local families who would have open fires. So that was the first little foray into a business, I guess you could say. We had all sorts of things. I was thinking about this morning, actually. A friend of mine, Tim, and I started a little business called Tim and Patty's Spuds, where on their little farm out on the edge of town they'd leased the farm out to some potato farmers. And when the potato farmers stopped using the farm, they had all these potatoes that were self-generating in the soil. So we thought, oh, what a great idea. We'll dig up the potatoes and sell them in little bags for $1 a bag or whatever it was back in the day. And we used to, in the summer holidays, make hundreds and hundreds of dollars sitting on the side of the road with bags of potatoes, where people would pull over and buy fresh dug potatoes.
So cool.
Which is bizarre to think, but making good little money for 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. It was good fun.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you can find them in your spinnies today, where you find Tim and Patty's hash browns.
Yeah, probably. But as a kid, it was always something going on, always having fun, a lot of sport, a lot of just enjoying life.
No, amazing. And like, was it like a big dream to become a big time entrepreneur? Was that on the cards always, kind of a thing then?
I don't know. My family's in the property industry back in Australia, but also in the agricultural industry back in Australia. So there was sort of always a thought of having something going on in those industries. Although as I got a bit older, I always thought I would never want to be in real estate, which is bizarre that now I'm in it. Yeah, and have been the whole time. But I always thought of something along the business side of things, but what that was back then, I guess you just don't know.
Yeah, and like, what's the journey into the property world, I guess, right? Like, how does it go from potatoes to property, I say?
So. Yeah, well, as I said, my family's in the real estate industry in Australia as well. So that's, I guess, a natural progression into that. I often said I didn't want to necessarily be into it, but it was probably a natural progression into it.
Gotcha. And like any sort of early highlights from your career? Like, obviously it's been a while that you've been doing this. What were like sort of the early days? We're talking about your time in like London or in Australia and then Dubai and yeah.
Yeah. So I originally started in the family business back home straight out of school, where I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. So I ended up in the family business. I remember in the winter time, it's quite cold down in where I'm from, and I was sitting there just on one of the job ads at websites, which was brand new back then to be in the internet.
Yeah.
Looking at jobs, and I came across a name for a job back in Melbourne, where I went to boarding school, and it was with basically an assistant to the number one agent in Australia, and he'd just changed companies, and his brother was sort of looking after all of his stuff while he was in a non-compete period of business, as happens in real estate. I'm sure you hear all sorts of stories of this. Anyway, I went and ended up getting the job with the company there and working with there, and that was my real introduction into what I would say really serious real estate. And not that it wasn't really serious real estate where I was from, but it was with the number one guys in the country and learning from the very best.
And how does the number one guys in Australia compare to the number one guys in the UK and UAE?
Very different style of real estate. I'm probably a little bit biased. I think what's coming out of Australia in terms of real estate, the professionalism, the marketing, and the ability to be on all aspects of real estate is as good as anywhere in the world. But that's not to say there's not fantastic agents in the UK, in the US, in the UAE. But I'm probably a bit biased, as I say. But I model a lot of what we do here in Dubai off some of the number one guys in the country in Australia.
And there's like a huge like data transparency piece as well out there that's like massive. I know that I forget the name of was it CoreLogic or something?
Yeah,
like
CoreLogic. Yeah,
it's like a massive Australian data sort of company, and like it's just set the global standard for real estate
big
data.
Prop tech companies coming out of Australia as well that sort of became in the past 10 years really very tech driven. Yeah. But it's tech driven as an assistant to very focused agents.
Yeah, and we've had a few conversations about this, right? Like, because there is the doomsday scenario where, everything is done by AI and nobody has jobs in any field, right? Like, and more specifically in real estate. And you've been very clear about sort of where you stand on that. You want to share a little bit more?
I think that AI is fantastic. Where it ends up, it'll be really interesting. And I don't think any of us really know at this point how far it can go. I think we get pitched on a daily basis at the moment, at least 5 times a day, whether it by LinkedIn, email, cold call, bots, or whatever it is. We're getting pitched AI products all the time. Yours is probably the closest to anything that we've taken on board in terms of AI at the moment. But I just think that too many people are trying to focus on something that will remove the human element. And the human element to me is what sales is. It's one of the things I say, and I learned this when I was at Foxtons all those years ago in the UK about, not trying to negotiate with email back then. It wasn't so much about text message or WhatsApp wasn't even around then. But, you negotiate by being in front of someone or speaking to them so you can hear the tonality in their voice. You can see the reaction to what you're saying. And I just think that the technology doesn't allow you to do that yet anyway. And so for me, AI is an assistant. It helps the agents to be better agents. Yeah. Now, it doesn't take over their role. And that's something that we're really big on and it's really important to us.
And if you had like a magic genie, not saying that you don't already have one, to kind of like come up with some assistive sort of technology to brokers today, what would that look like, I guess?
I think some of the things that you're working on, and it's not necessarily groundbreaking technology, but it's just good quality stuff. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but it's stuff that is out there, but you just got to be the best at it. Yeah. So I think that the assistant side of things that you can say, for example, with Kendall, hey, Kendall, I need you to put this note in my diary, put that note on the system about a certain client, and get to the level where we can send out market reports or send out, in Australia we call it appraisals here. It's not really done like that, but listing information to clients that you're going to see about their property. I think that type of AI is fantastic, but the agents who will thrive with AI will be the ones who use it as an assistant rather than, they're going to do my job for me.
Yeah. And do you think that's going to be different across like the lettings business and the sales business, for instance?
I don't think so, because a lot of it is similar in workflow. Different forms, different zeros at the end of a contract and so on. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of similarities in the administrative side of what you're doing to put a deal from speaking to someone, showing them a property. I mean, AI can't do that yet, can it? So, there's a lot of those things, but in the background, AI can be helping send a contract or get something signed or add a note to a diary or an element of administrative work that you would do anyway.
Right. And I think that's exactly right. Like having this sort of repeat behavior, right? Like voice noting and things like that people already sort of do. You're not really changing the way that they're doing things. It's just sort of allowing that voice behavior to then automate all the sort of back end boring stuff that no one wants to do anyways.
Yeah,
kind of a
absolutely.
Thing. So,
I think there's certain aspects of real estate, the administrative stuff, and typically agents are, they're not necessarily very good with paperwork, and they will take shortcuts, as we all do, to get the deal done. There's certain aspects of it, and every owner of a business, every manager is constantly pulling their hair out about, the agent didn't do this, but they haven't ticked that box on the checklist, or they haven't sent that form that needs to be sent. That kind of stuff that is so annoying for managers and owners of businesses trying to get people to follow procedures. AI can take some of that off their hands. So that's going to be a great part.
Yeah, I was talking about this with Charlie Bannon the other day, right? Like where you kind of have like this internal knowledge base sort of a assistant in a way, where like someone's coming out to you like, Patrick, what do you think about this email that I've just written up? Or like, what do you think about this contract I've just drafted up, this agreement, etc. And things that literally take time away from you when you're busy like growing the business basically, right? And doing it at scale as well. So I think that's really interesting to have like this. And the whole point of AI is like you can constantly improve, right? The knowledge base. And very, very interesting, and like super excited to roll it out with you guys as well, right? Like, and every week we have very interesting chats, of course. Patrick's very happy with using Kendall, by the way, just putting it out there for.
No, absolutely. No, it's a really great product. So, and what I love about it with you guys especially is that, and I did it this morning, I sent a message to the team saying we need this, or we want to action something around a certain part of the deal flow, for example. And Drishti was, I think it was Drishti or Susanna, one of them messaged back straight away saying, great, I put it on the sheet, we're looking into it today, we'll give you an update shortly. Other CRMs and other technology platforms would take 6 months to even put on a workflow, whereas you guys will have it done in a week for us, and it'll be literally done.
Yeah, I think it's like in our interest as well, right? To like basically build the best possible tool for the real estate industry. So every piece of feedback, we take it very seriously. And we got this SF energy that we bring to Dubai, like constantly iterating and like,
Well, as I said to you about it, if you make it easy for agents and brokerages to switch and say yes, they will.
Yeah.
If you have a product that people want to use and say, how do we make it work? Let's just make it work. They will go, okay, great. It's a benefit to us. Let's do it.
Have you ever been tempted to build like a technology business in
many
the
times.
Space?
Yeah, we've looked at it. When I moved back from Australia from the UK after using the Boss system at Foxtons, which was by far the best system not in the market, but that you could use as an agent way back then, 15, 20 years ago. We looked at it in Australia and just decided too hard. I looked at it 2 or 3 times at previous companies and too hard. We had funding, around $1 million in funding about 12 months ago, and we sat down with a group of us in a room, and I just said, I can't sit in a room all day doing this and putting what I would like to put into a system into it, because I'm just not as technology minded as someone like yourself and others who can do a better job of it, to be honest. So,
and plus you make way more money on the other side.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's something that I find really interesting, but actually then putting what we want into a system, that's not my expertise. And I think, it's like agents, stick to what you know and what you're good at. Don't try and do too many things. So we've already got enough on our plate with all the things we're doing in the business. So, and then not long after that, we were lucky enough to be introduced to yourself, and I thought, you guys are going to do such a good job, and if we help you and give you some advice along the way of what agents like and what they don't like, and with probably a few other people, I think you guys are going to build a much better product than what we would have.
No, that's very kind. What's your hot take on sort of Dubai real estate right now?
It's so hard to know what's going to happen in the future, but and anyone who said we would be at this stage, I think deep down would have been lying. We've gone from a very low base though to a very high base in a short period of time. At some point, I think we're going to see some kind of, not necessarily softening, but an easing of increases in prices. However, on the flip side to that, if you look at the increase in population predictions, and we don't need to go into necessarily any statistics, but there's just so many people still moving here, and that gives me great confidence. You go to the mall and I have one of my good friends, Tom, who has a company called EDX, which is a cafe and restaurant business here in Dubai, and we often talk about how the businesses not necessarily have a correlation, but if restaurants are busy, Dubai's busy. And if the malls are busy and the cafes are busy and people are buying coffees, then that's a really good sign for Dubai. You look at the roads and they're full. You look at the schools, there's big long waiting lists. We got a message from our school for the kids the other day saying we've got an extended waiting list. We need to know 100% is your child going to be staying at the school for the next academic year, and we haven't even finished this year yet. There's a lot smarter people out there who can talk to you about statistics and economics and so on, rather than me. But if you look at the simple fact that there's a lot of people here and a lot of people still wanting to come here, even in Australia, we've just had a government that, an election that the left side of government is got back into power. So there's obviously part of the wealthier potentially looking at tax implications and so on, and we've seen that throughout Europe and other areas, and looking at this region saying, well, why wouldn't I move there? Why wouldn't I bring my funds there and be in a tax-free environment, and the weather's great, and safety and all of the things that we all know that we all love about Dubai. And people are it's continued. It's like it seems to be everywhere else in the world is making it easy for Dubai to be a place that is going to continue to thrive.
I'm always curious to know, like every brokerage owner and every real estate professional has this sort of set of buyers that are quite interesting and of a certain demographic kind of a thing. Like, are they entrepreneurs? Are they crypto bros? Are they technology guys? Are they, just big business, traditional textiles, like whatever? What does that look like for you?
It's so varied. It really is. I mean, I'm not personally day-to-day listing and selling like I used to. I'm, more helping our team mostly, but I still handle a handful of my own clients that, I've worked with for many years. And, that's great because when you get, and this has taken a long time to get to, mind you, it's not like you're in the industry for 6 months and you can say that I've got all these long-term clients. It's years and years of building relationships and networks. But I've got crypto buyers. Some of my best buyers are crypto tech industry people who have made unbelievable sums of money from the industry. I've got sold some big properties to German pharmaceutical people. I've got Australian clients coming in. We've got people from Asia at the moment selling some properties that long-term relationships, and just a little bit of everything.
Crazy.
And that's the best thing about Dubai. It's not one demographic, not one age group, one nationality. We come across so many different nationalities and people from all parts of the world, and it's great. That's what I love about it.
And what have you sort of obviously in doing that, you've had to build a massive team to sort of support all of this as well. What's kind of like the lesson in leadership, I guess, that you've sort of picked up from having to do all that?
That's a hard part because, when you go from being a broker on your own or within, maybe a small team or something, you don't have the people management, and that is one of the biggest issues in, takes up most of your time. It's not, I don't mean an issue, but, there's often things that you're helping other people with all day, every day, whether it's someone's having an issue with a deal, someone's having an issue with another colleague, someone's having an issue with another agent, someone's sick, someone's got to be covered because they're on holidays, someone's on maternity leave, having babies. There's all sorts of things, and that ends up taking up a lot of your time. And you'll find this as well when you're growing your team at Kendall. That
I can't even imagine.
You go from just being out there working with clients, doing deals, to all of a sudden you've got to have HR meetings, you've got to have accounts team meetings, you've got to have management meetings on your studio team, you've got to have, and that's just, one small aspect of your day. So the people management and the team management is a big thing.
Yeah. And do you have any big quotes that you sort of hold, like that you kind of like repeat to yourself or something like that? Or do you have any of your own?
I do. I have a lot, actually. I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and you pick little things up. But one of my favorites at the moment is just a little bit of progress every day. So when you're having a bad day, you just think a little bit of progress every day and you'll get there. And people often underestimate what you can do in a long period of time and overestimate what you can do in a short period of time, and you think you can go from here to here in one day, yet that little bit of progress every day, and all of a sudden 6 months down the track you've got this, all the things that you wanted to do. But there's lots of little quotes here you go over.
Go for it. No, but I mean, like we've got this where you say keep stacking wins, right? Like whatever small wins, whatever it might be.
In a football analogy, back when I was growing up, it would be the 1%ers. They would talk about the 1%ers that in Australian rules football is the tackle or the kick or these 1% things that you can do to help your team. And I think that's the same as an agent, no matter which part of the industry you're in or which part of the business you're in. There are these 1% things that you can do every day to help you get better, to help you learn more, and to help your team get better as well. So I think those little bit of progress every day helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, let's say there's a young Timmy and Patty joining your team, let's say tomorrow.
I shouldn't have told you that. You just let me down about that.
I'm going to make so many potato jokes. No. Yeah. No, but if there are some new starters sort of coming into your team tomorrow, and you know me and Aman reasonably well, like we're the sales guys, right? Like we run that side. What's sort of your advice to them? Like, how do they even approach this market, right? Because like you said, before you came in here, several cold calls, several emails, several LinkedIn messages. Yeah. How do you even stand out?
It's the market here has become really saturated. But what I would say that you need to do as a new broker is be an absolute sponge for knowledge and learn from the people around you and create a structure. So the very best agents that I've ever met all around the world make it happen, I think, fairly well on their own because they follow the footsteps of people that have gone before them. And now it's so easy to get access to information to teach you what to do. If you sit back and complain about, our company doesn't do this, or that company gets this, or that person does this, or they're lucky, you're never going to succeed in real estate with that sort of attitude. But the very best agents that I've seen, they will pick people that they've seen be successful before them, and they will go, there's a blueprint for what I can do, and they will follow that and copy them and be an absolute sponge for the information of things you're hearing. I talk to our team about how much time should be spent in offices and so on, because when I started in real estate, obviously it's a very different place and it's a very different time, but I did basically a 4-year apprenticeship as an assistant in real estate to learn the knowledge that I picked up. And then you pick up more and more and more about being around other people who are successful. If you spend time around those people, you will pick up so much. And that's what I would say is the number one thing is find someone who's really successful in the area or the area of the business or the market that you're in, and just copy them and listen to them and follow them around. If I'm brand new and you're an agent who says, I'm an expert in whatever area and you've been there for a while, there's a high chance that you've got clients who are looking for a property, or there's a property that you have that you're trying to find a client for. Speak to that person and say, can I work on your property with you? Yeah. Most of the really good agents and busy agents will be more than happy for you to bring a buyer to them. So work on that, or vice versa. Let me call through our database and find a buyer for you, or let me call through the properties or the owner database that you have that buyer for that you haven't been able to find a property for.
I think it's this mentality switch of like give before you kind of ask almost, right? Like everyone's asking.
Yeah.
So if you're the person to sort of give, then maybe you stand out with at least people internally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of working in that team environment. And I know here in Dubai, it's individual, which is slightly foreign to me because the Australian real estate market that I grew up in, everyone was in teams. It was all about teams. So Joel, as the senior agent, would employ a junior agent, and maybe back then it was a buyer agent. Then you'd have an administrative agent, and then you'd have maybe someone helping on the selling side.
Yep.
And you create these small teams. They call them EBUs, effective business units, or super teams as they get a bit bigger. When I started, we were called personal assistants to the senior agent, and I think now in Australia you would be called an associate. But basically, that's how you learnt. So you're around someone, and I was lucky enough to work with the best guys in the country. So I was a sponge for this information. And you look at how people can then go from being in that team environment to then stepping out as their own agent in their own right and doing really well, and then creating their own team. It's something that we're bringing on board in our in our company now, because it just doesn't happen here. But as an agent, to have access to support underneath you when you need something done is really important. But also it's great for the company as well, because it helps build the next generation of agents 100%. Within the company, and it helps the senior agents when they need to go on holidays. They know they've got a junior guy or a girl to help, that they've trained their way to help on their properties. But I think that's a really important thing to look for in the future here.
No, 100%. Like that mentorship sort of culture, and like not very transient and short-minded in the sense that, I just got to beat out the guy next to me kind of a thing.
No, exactly. Versus, I mean, I've worked at some many companies here that it was almost a badge of honor to take a deal off the person sitting next to you, and that's not the environment we want. We want the person next to you saying, how can I help you get a deal? Yeah. What can I do to help you? Because as a team, we all achieve more. When I talk about teams within our company, so the senior agent will have a team of 2 or 3 agents themselves that they're responsible for. All the commission within that is split between those agents in there. And a lot of agencies here will have an area manager with a team, but still they're individual agents within that team. So I think that working together is really important moving forward. And certainly as the market here matures, you're going to want agents to work with, not against.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And look, obviously being in your shoes, running a brokerage and things like that, it's something that I always try to understand is the people behind these big brands and things like that, right? The stories are way more interesting to me than any of the market predictions and whatever, right? So for something I always ask guests is, what is sort of the hardest thing that you've sort of had to do, and how did you do it?
Oh, where do you start? It's, I mean, in terms of a business, that, as I said, one of the hardest parts is just keeping the people management side of things under control, which is, it's part of the fun of it as well, but it can be really stressful, people coming and going, and the cost of the hiring processes in Dubai and running the businesses now is it's got to a pretty expensive sort of level. The hardest part, I think, for agents though, is when they see a deal that's this close and it doesn't go ahead. And they've banked that money. They've thought that deal's going ahead, and
they've bought their Porsche in their head.
Yeah, not even that. It's probably more for the early or the newer agents, and can take time to make money. People in this industry see the glitz and glamour on social media and think day one I'm going to be doing millions of dirhams in commissions. It doesn't happen like that. Some people get lucky, but usually, and I talk to our team about making it a long-term play. If you want to be in the industry, think of it as a long term. What can I do now that in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time is going to pay huge dividends to me? Because just to go back on the part about where you might have a deal that you expecting that deal to go through to pay your rent, or your car payment or your credit card payment, or as you get a bit older, your school fees and so on. And deals fall through so easily. And probably some of your other guests have talked about deals that they thought they might have had in the bank, and it doesn't go ahead. I've had deals fall through at transfer at the land department where people meet each other for the first time, the buyer and seller, and decide they don't want to sell it. It's not as easy as that. But back in the day, you would have someone turn up and say, I'm not doing the transfer unless you pay me more money. There's crazy things happen to it. But I think that's one of the hardest parts, is when a deal falls through that you think so close, especially the big ones.
How should you spend your first million / how should you spend your commissions? Because
Probably not the way I did.
Oh, okay.
But look, I always say that people, and learning from experience, you need to have a rainy day fund in Dubai. You have to put some away. You have to put money away into an investment, into a property. I think it's really important to have some liquid cash, somewhere in some kind of a stock or crypto or something that is relatively liquid to get access to if you need it. Dubai is an expensive place to live, but I think you've also got to reward yourself for the hard work, especially, if you do a big deal, $1 million dirham plus commissions and so on, you have to reward yourself.
Why?
I think hard, you've got to reward hard work. And if you're getting to that level and you're doing sort of deals at that sort of level, you've probably done a lot of hard work to get there and gone through a lot of heartache and been through deals falling through, buyers, fake buyers, scammers, all of the things that we've all been through in Dubai. I think it's really important to reward the efforts that you put in, but then don't focus on that too much. You've got to move on to the next one. We're one of the girls in our office, very new in the sales side of the business. Her first deal transferred and got excited, but I said, let's focus on getting the next one. And I think there's 2 more deals that she's just signed in the last 24, 48 hours on the back of that, because she's focused on getting the next couple of deals done. It's very easy to get sidetracked on the reward side of things and going out and spending the money and, beach clubs and parties and all of that. And that's fun. As part of Dubai, you've got to enjoy that. Yeah. But don't let that sidetrack you off the end goal and the long-term plan of being super successful, because 1 or 2 great deals doesn't last long. But listening back to some of the podcasts, talked about how, $1 million dirham commission it's not going to last 10 years.
Callum
it might have been Callum.
Yeah.
It's not going to last 5-10 years. Once you've, paid for a car and, with us, we've got kids, so school fees and all of these things, it doesn't last long. And might seem like a lot of money to go into the account, goes out very quickly.
Yeah.
Put some money away in a rainy day, put a bit into investments. I'm a crypto fan, so put some money into crypto, into Bitcoin, but also enjoy yourself. Buy yourself a decent car, get yourself some decent clothes, and buy a property.
Yeah.
And this is 100%. Something that's really important for anyone in Dubai. Doesn't matter if it's where in the world it is. I think any real estate agent to give advice on property should have bought and sold a property at least once in their life.
Yeah.
Whether it's an off-plan purchase, whether it's an investment property back home, whether it's something in Dubai that they live in, it's an investment. It's really interesting how I would suspect that most or a lot of agents in Dubai real estate have never owned a property. And do you want to be taking advice from someone who hasn't been through the even just the emotional side of the property side of things, of buying and selling and getting an offer, and do I take it, do I not?
Let's say I'm 30, right? I've got a decent job, make like, I don't know, 20K a month or something like that. What do I like? What would you say I should go out and buy today?
Very interesting question, because I wouldn't necessarily say that you're going to get something unbelievable on that sort of salary, but there are so many different options in Dubai in terms of payment plans and so on. It doesn't necessarily have to be in Dubai. There's some other Emirates around here, and even in your home country, you can buy property. We should be buying property in Dubai. Yeah. But I just think the amount of options in Dubai right now, you could buy so many things.
What do you think about,
for example, there's studio apartments on great, Sky Hills, I think, is one of the ones that you can buy studios on in the Arjan area there. I'm not saying that specific development, but there's a lot of developments. I think you've just got to be a bit careful in the larger developments that have a lot of, say, studios or one beds, that if you want to get out of that investment, you want something that's maybe slightly unique, slightly different. Now, obviously, the higher your budget, the more opportunity you have to buy something a bit more unique.
So you're not of the opinion that they should go fractional, like, necessarily?
Look, I think there's a long way to go in that side of things. I'm not a huge fan of it because I worry about the liquidity of being able to cash out if you want to. Now, you might be able to tell me more that you can cash out, and there's market makers and that will take pieces of it. Unlike shares or unlike, say, crypto,
right?
Property's a little bit different. You really should be buying property more of a long-term nature. And this is the one part that I worry about this market in the next little while, about how many people have invested on a very short-term narrative of what they're being told about
selfies to phase, like
we're going to give you guaranteed 50% return, or 30% in 6 months. And yes, some people have achieved that, and that's more, I would suggest, good luck than good management, with the market just being so strong. But I wouldn't be investing in projects if that's what you're being told about. For me, it's easy to get sold the glitz and glamour, but I think you've got to look long term about, if I have to hold this for 5 or 10 or 15 years, am I happy to hold it? And that's the investment you should be looking at, not can I turn this over in 6 months? Now, a renovation project, totally different. But someone who comes and says, I can double your money in 6 months on a one bed or a studio in one of these developments, I'd be very, very mindful of that.
Very interesting. I mean, the reason I asked that is because there's so many people that obviously talk about the millionaires that are moving to Dubai, billionaires, etc. But there's also very strong, working, middle half of the economy that, also want to get involved.
That's where I think that the market is going to continue to stay strong. And if I was investing today, if you said you had to invest in something, it would be in a villa or a townhouse, something that I can add value to. So I would take one of the older communities that has a larger plot size, that I can add a pool, that I can add built-up area, depending on the cost of each developer's built-up extension prices on a square foot basis. I'd be looking for something that's run down, it's been tenanted for 10 years and needs some real love and attention, and that I can add value to. That's what I'd be looking at. But that's my personal sort of thought about investment for the long term.
Yep.
Other people have different strategy around what they want to do. Some people, it's just, I want to park some money for 2 or 3 years into something. I've got liquidity, I need to put it into something. Some people like the idea of the payment plan on an EMA project, for example, or other projects that are offering really fantastic payment plans and post-handover payment plans. So there's so many opportunities there. It just really depends on the individual person. But I really like the idea of adding value to a property, because it just adds, obviously, significance to absolutely. Look, we've done some, we're helping with some big players in the renovation market and some development things that we're doing, and the value that they've added, partly because they've done a great job, partly because they've bought the right product to be able to add the value to, partly because the market's gone up and there's more people in the higher end buying that product. But they've added great value to it, and they've made a lot of money doing it.
And, again, going back to the young person quite selfishly, it's sort of asking, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
I would give the advice to save more money, be more adventurous, travel at that age. Nowadays, the world's your oyster. Travel the world like I did. But I would say save more money and invest more back into. It doesn't necessarily have to be property, but that should be part of your investment strategy. And be a sponge and learn as much as you can. Knowledge is power. A lot of people go into a university degree or go into something that they think that they should do, but it's not necessarily something they love and they're passionate about. So find something you're really passionate about, because you're going to do it well. And then find people who have done it well before you and copy them. Most people who are successful in a field will be more than happy to share their knowledge with someone who they can see is passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. Like the people that are sign an NDA, be cagey about their approach or whatever it is, it's usually not going to make it vibes as we say it in crypto, right? No, but very, very interesting. Patrick, thank you so much for making the time. And
thanks for having me. It's always great pleasure to talk. And, we always end up having a very fruitful conversation whenever we do talk. And usually it ends up with some really good extra parts of Kendall coming in the future. So
I should also shout the fact out that Patrick is the first guest ever, guys, to bring me a gift. There's some really nice, good-looking patchy chocolates there. Oh man!
Well, the reason I did that is because that if you look at your social media, every single time that you guys post, it's food. It's sitting there celebrating a big win, eating food. So there's some chocolates for you and the team.
Hey, every time you guys increase users, we go to we go to the nicest Indian restaurant. No, but look, Patrick, thank you so much for making the time and genuinely for like being an early believer in Kendall as well.
No problems. You guys are going places, and we're more than happy to be a part of it.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, awesome. Well, that's been this week's episode of The Real Ones. Come back next week for yet another killer episode.